break. Let's do 10 minutes. And we will come back for the next activity at 2:10. And we will talk through the second project, which is scoping your UX accelerator project. All right, so I'm going to put my camera off. I'll see you in 10 minutes. And I noticed that there were a couple of folks who joined for the second session. So if you are joining for the second session and you joined late, what you can do is you can turn your camera on, and then I just need to check that you're a real person before I share the interactive FigJam session. If you don't want to do that and you feel comfortable with your camera off, you can still follow along in the view only version of our FigJam file, which was emailed via Eventbrite. And you can make a copy of that, or you can follow along using pen and paper to write out your ideas and work through the workbook. But we will get started in about 4 more minutes. Just wanted to give everyone a bio break and just a snack break as well.
Hey, hi, this is Sarita here.
Hi, great to see you.
Yeah.
Let me go ahead and share the file with you.
Yeah, the issue is this is a workshop. I got it, but I was not able to log in for a very long time, so I was not aware whether this is actually happening or not.
Okay. My apologies for that. Yeah, the link is up, so anyone should be able to join with the Zoom link at any time during the session.
Okay, I may not be because I'm on phone right now, so that's the issue.
Okay, you can just follow along through the phone and you can write down the answers to your answers or your ideas in a notebook for now.
Okay, yeah.
And I see Amanda, would you like access to our FigJam file?
Yes, please. Thank you so much.
All right, yes, let me go ahead and share that. All right, you should get a private message from me with the FigJam file.
Okay, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Yeah. And I see Kay, would you like access as well?
Yeah, thank you so much.
Okay. So here,
And you just mentioned that we are gonna get a record for the session.
yes, yeah,
Oh,
you
that
can.
would be perfect. Thank you.
And I see Erin on the phone. Would you like access to FigJam? All right, perfect. It will be harder to interact with FigJam on the phone, but you can follow along via like note taking and things like that as well. All right, so we'll get started in about 2 minutes. As you join back from a bio and snack breaks, just give me a thumbs up so I know you're back. And I'll just get started at 2:10. And I think what I'm going to do in the next minute or so is catch up the folks who are just joining us. So if you weren't able to join us for our UX career planning session, no worries, I will send a recording out. What we essentially did was we mapped out whether you had found a right career path for you or you were still feeling that out. We talked about transferable skill sets into UX from past work or educational backgrounds over the last 1 to 5 years. And we also talked about knowledge gaps that were needed in order to address a UX career in the future. And then activity 4 is where it kind of got meaty, where it was about talking about what to present in your current UX portfolio that aligned with your past and rebranded your past into transferable skills into UX, but also thought about your future and what industries you were excited about or what problems you wanted to solve in the future. So your UX portfolio needs to have a good amount of your past expertise and how that's rebranded in terms of transferable skill sets, but also what you're looking forward to or what you're interested in that really aligns with your future. And so this is where people were kind of getting stuck or they needed more time to think about it. And that's why we're having the second activity on scoping your UX Accelerator project to really take a whole hour to explore ideas and options. And another thing to think about was more the long-term strategies. So what are you going to do in 2026 and 2027? What's your timeline to break into UX? And do you have the time and effort and required to kind of put in the work to land the job in the next year or two? And then what's the big picture beyond just pivoting into UX? So what kind of impact do you want to leave behind? By asking those bigger picture questions, we can really focus on what matters to us, today and how we can build a portfolio that really aligns with our personal values and beliefs and brand. So with that, we are at 2:11, so I'm going to go ahead and get started with our second activity for the day, for the hackathon. And we're going to now really, for the folks who've been with me for the last hour, I want you to really take that time to think about what's a problem that you wanted to solve for a specific community based on your past transferable skill sets and where you want to be in the future. So this is where it gets interesting. We had someone who worked with us and who was in one of our cohorts named Andrea, and she came from a 10-year fashion design background. But she wanted to solve a new problem in the fashion space because she wanted to break into UX for e-commerce. So she had some time to go through that career planning that we talked about, and she realized that the best way to carry forward her transferable skill sets was to leverage her fashion design background into a UX research role in the e-commerce space. So what she did was she wanted to work with Gen Z folks, and we have a YouTube video of her walking through her project, so you can check that out when you have some time. But she wanted to work with Gen Z folks who identified as non-binary, and she wanted to create a non-binary fashion system where catalogs were not gendered and there were no rigid constraints that were gender-based around fashion and what someone could wear or not wear. And so that was kind of her problem space that she started to explore. So what's the problem you're trying to solve for a specific community? Is it something like Gen Z fashion forward consumers want to be able to create non-binary looks, but are limited by what today's gendered catalog system with rigid constraints around who should wear what? So to start to come up with that problem statement, what's the problem with existing industries today? If you come from healthcare, if you come from education or graphic design, what problems have you noticed in your industry that are just not being addressed? And there's just no innovation happening around that current problem. That's where the exciting ideas are. It's not about building a copycat Figma or a copycat Amazon or a copycat Spotify or Netflix, right? But what is something that a hiring manager in those spaces would be really excited about because you took a unique approach to solving a problem that has gone unaddressed within that space? Here's another example of a problem statement. Women professionals are looking for clean makeup and care about sustainability, not wanting to waste skincare or dispose of too much packaging. So what problems are you noticing? And I think the more specific you can get about the community that you would like to help, the better it is. So try and find a niche community that has been underserved or is completely invisible to mainstream markets currently. A really great example in the beauty space is Fenty Beauty. The beauty industry is notoriously saturated, so there's a lot of competition in the beauty space. It's very hard for a startup to break into the beauty space and create something new and innovative just because of the level of saturation. There's so many interesting and flashy brands in the beauty space out there. But Rihanna was very strategic about how she built Fenty Beauty, and that's why it succeeded and became a billion-dollar business in the first year that it launched. And what she noticed was there was a unique problem that mainstream beauty brands were just not addressing. And they were not addressing that women with really light skin tones and dark skin tones were not able to find their color match because most mainstream beauty brands only provided anywhere between 10 to 20 different shades of foundation. So Rihanna noticed that foundation was the key problem. Finding a color match in foundation was the toughest problem to solve. And that was how she was able to build a brand that not only offered more than 20 shades, it offered about 40 shades on launch and then moved up to 50 different shades. So she did twice what, or even 3 times what the mainstream beauty industry did. And to be able to operate at that level, she had to have exceptional business modeling, exceptional operational and service design. Imagine having to manufacture 2 or 3 times more what mainstream big name brands do, right? And she's a startup, so she's not coming in as an established company just yet. So she was able to build a very operationally thoughtful platform and manufacturing operations. It was rapid manufacturing operations that enabled her to launch with 40 different shades worldwide and distribute to about 120 or 30 different countries worldwide right at inception. And that exceptional combination of UX strategy, UX research, business strategy, service design is what led her to build a very iconic brand that we all see as one of the household brand names currently in the makeup and fashion world. So start to think about what's a problem that you are trying to solve for a specific community and what's invisible about that community. What are some problems that remain invisible, even though they're blaring problems, but just the mainstream hasn't addressed it yet? That's where the exciting stuff lives. So take a minute or two to think about it. And when you're ready, start to put down sticky notes on this board and start to put down some of your problem statements. Especially if you're coming from like an education or service design background, I want you to think about problems in your space that nobody is solving currently, right? So is it, with Daniela? Daniela noticed the gap in education because she was a principal and an educator in elementary school for 10 years. The gap was neurodivergent needs. Kids with neurodivergent needs didn't have the right socialization tools and they didn't learn socialization in school. And the way the school approached it just wasn't thorough enough. So that was the gap that she addressed. So take 5 minutes to think about it. And I'm going to set the timer. And I'd love it if folks could start getting on the board so that we can see some of those problem statements being written down. And as you're thinking about this, I don't want you to get too serious. I know in the previous career planning session, it was much more serious and it was about long-term goals and vision. For this activity, I want you to be playful, right? If you haven't figured it all out yet, that's totally okay. Just put something on paper, right? The beauty of a sticky note is that it's temporary. It is not as edited. It's not as professional and presentable. It is just like a note on a paper, right? So I want you to be playful and scrappy with your sticky notes. And I want you to say, oh yeah, I might have two ideas. I'm not really sure where I'm going, but I'm just going to jot something down. I'm just going to put something on paper and I can always come back to it and refine it later. But part of learning UX design is to get into a more playful state of mind because that's the only way you can be really creative. And if you take your ideas too seriously and you're like, this has to be perfect, you lose your creativity and you become too rigid in your thinking and you get really stuck in tunnel vision on one idea or one approach. So it's important to keep that play in mind and just be like, oh yeah, I'm going to do a little here. I'm going to do a little there. I'm just going to play around. It doesn't matter if this is like a beautiful idea or a really bad idea. Sometimes the best ways to start is to come up with a really bad idea and a deliberately bad one, and then that might lead to more ideation. So even if you feel like it's a bad idea or a silly idea or whatever label you put on it, put it out there and then refine it from there. And I'll put some of my silly ideas out there that I've been thinking about as well. All right, we're coming up on time. As you can see, my problem statements right now are just stake in the grounds, right? They're just my observations from things I've been seeing and noticing in my life. And as you can see, all my problems focus around community and women. And just because that's the space I naturally think about late at night or like think about when I'm like walking the dog or something. So yeah, I'd love to look at your thoughts. So in big cities where moving around is a norm, like New York and Boston, how short-term lease rentals can be found easily. How about furniture to be dealt with? That's really great. Community housing as a scenario. I really love this. These are great areas to think about. Small group interaction and no pressure socialization for introverts. Great one. Immersive language learners maintaining fluency. People who studied abroad or learned a language to an advanced level. People invest years becoming proficient in a language and then gradually lose fluency. That's a really great one. Let's see. Christine, in the Bay Area, a lot of people require public transportation, making the ticketing experience more seamless and delightful. For healthcare admins, insurance verification can take anywhere from 5 minutes to an hour per patient. How might we make this frictionless? Great. These are great ones. Neurodivergent customers and disabled people have a difficult time when shopping. Stores should have more structure and trainings for their employees. I love this. Yeah, so everyone's starting to come up with really great ideas. I want to now see if we can be a little bit broader about our statement. So that hypothesis problem statement we wrote down was just for ourselves, right? We were kind of thinking in our minds, okay, yeah, this is the problem that we need to solve, or this is the observations we've had over the years in our specific spaces. Now, when we turn our challenges into how might we statements, we're inviting a whole group of people to help us solve this problem. So if you are a startup founder and you're leading a team, it's not just up to you to solve that problem. It's about you to bring your team in on what the problem is you're trying to solve, but frame the problem in such a way where each team member has some creative juices going and they can bring in new and unique perspectives that you hadn't considered before. Same thing if you're a researcher on a team or you're trying to get a group of stakeholders to ideate with you as a design consultant, right? You want to get as many unique perspectives on that statement, how might we question, so that you can really evolve multiple perspectives. So questions could be things like, how might we create a non-binary fashion system? How might we create a sustainable package and clean makeup, right? So how can you frame your problem space in a more general how might we statement that brings other people in and gets other people really excited to solve your problem? And I feel like the examples I wrote initially are not that great. So now that I'm thinking about it, I'm going to come up with a few new statements. So how might we, and I'm going to set the timer for 5. All right, we have about 3 more minutes. And I took the problem statements, the 3 problem statements I wrote in the original activity, and came up with different levels of scope. One is a really narrow level of scope for a very niche community, and the other is a very general scope. And I just wanted to start playing around with scope. So the most narrow scope is the first one. How might we help solo women travelers connect with locals more authentically? That group of solo women travelers is a very niche space, but I wanted to explore a more narrow scope for that one. The second one is kind of a middle ground scope. How might we help women daters feel safe and create intentional, meaningful connections online? And then the third one is how might we facilitate meaningful in real life connection from online social media interactions? And again, I took out the community of people I was trying to focus on just to see, what that would feel like as a broader scope. So here I'm just starting to play with scope to kind of see what feels right in terms of scope. Is a scope too narrow or is a scope too broad? And that's something that, we'll take some more time to think about, but we're just playing around with it for now. So I'll give everyone about 2 more minutes to wrap up. All right, as we're coming up on time, I'm just going to read a couple of these statements. How might we improve shopping experiences for neurodivergent people? How might we be able to communicate better with deaf and blind people? Should we ask for experience from employees to offer training ourselves? How might we create an app or community that's local? How might we help advanced language learners maintain fluency after leaving immersive environments? I love that question. That's really well thought out. How might we help advanced language learners maintain confidence in speaking when they no longer use the language regularly? How might we help to create a vibrant or supportive community for house renters? How might we help intergenerational housing residents to build better connections? Ooh, I really love that one. That is so unique. It addresses a side of housing that we haven't thought of before in the traditional sense. And that's where you get your little gems, right? Most housing market elements right now online focus on renters or sellers or buyers, but we don't think about community renting spaces or community driven spaces that we might want to buy or sell for multiple families or for chosen family. And I think that's really exciting. And I think there's a whole new space coming up over there that is worth considering and it's worth ideating on. How might we help the unhoused community in San Fran reintegrate back into society? I love these questions. These are all really thoughtful ones. Keep taking time to think about these questions. And for the folks I notice a lot of the folks coming in new, take some time to align with the 2026 UX career planning activities so that whatever you built for your project topic is aligned with where you want to go and how you want to be perceived in terms of your unique personal brand for your UX project. So now we need to think about what's different about our approach. For now, we've kind of thought about problem statements. We've played around with the scope of problem statements in terms of how might we questions and framing it to a broader audience so that we can invite other people to design and build with us. But now we need to think about the differentiator, right? I don't think all of us, myself included, have actually thought about a differentiator for each of our statements. And this is what makes a project topic unique or interesting is it's different from what exists out there, right? It's solving something that no one else has addressed. And I think from that old activity we did, the how might we statements, this statement from Kay, this how might we from Kay on intergenerational housing is really interesting. That's one of those gems where there's a differentiator. There's something new and unique there. So start to think about what's different about your approach. And as you start thinking about differentiators, you might realize that out of all those 3 or 5 different ideas you came up with, now only 1 or 2 ideas start to look really good. And now you're realizing you're narrowing down your scope based on the difference in your approach and what's unique about your approach. So from those old examples, their focus was on non-binary fashion rather than gendered fashion. That's the differentiator that Andrea did for her project. Focus on clean, sustainable makeup rather than flashy brand identity. I feel like this differentiator is no longer as different anymore, right? Like there's a lot of good beauty and makeup brands out there that are clean, that maybe don't have flashy packaging or have sustainable packaging. I feel like that's become more of a thing nowadays. So that's why we always have to keep ideating and keep rethinking our unique perspectives. So I'm going to put the timer on and we're going to rethink, what's different. And we might add to our original problem statements. Maybe if we can't find what's different, it means we need to add something more. We have about 2.5 more minutes left. I'm just going to read mine out loud, and then I'm going to read other folks' FigJam activities as well. So I realized from the 3 ideas I generated in the session that I needed to add more. So for the online platforms, I wrote most online social media platforms focused on getting people hooked on social media. Ours will focus on getting them offline to focus on in real life connection. So that's been an idea I've been thinking a lot about recently. The more salesy and marketing social media gets, or the more it's kind of geared towards selling and creators. Most dating platforms focus on gamification, making people feel like they have too many options. Ours will focus on quality over quantity. And then here for the traveling idea, I wrote most traveling apps focus on touristy attractions. Ours focuses on the authentic connections you make while doing everyday activities in other countries, like grabbing drinks, grocery shopping, going dancing. So I'm just going to give everyone a minute more, and then we can go into different people's ideas. And I see, Sue, that you sent me a message about interacting. If you would just be able to turn your camera on so I can see you're a real person, and then I'm happy to give you edit access. I try to save the edit access for folks who I see and I can, establish that they're a real person. Unfortunately, we've had a couple of Zoom bombers attend our events in the past, and that's meant that we have to vet folks. So yeah, if you turn your camera on for a minute and introduce yourself, then I'm happy to send you a link. And if you're unable to turn your camera on for the folks just joining, you can still follow along in the view-only version of FigJam I sent via Eventbrite in an email, or you can use a notebook and paper to kind of write out your ideation as well. All right. So I'm just going to shift back to the activity and read some of the statements that we're seeing here. So Kay wrote about co-housing is not a main area in the housing market for now, but the idea of living together and sharing resources deals with problems like the housing crisis, loneliness, aging without proper care. While planning and building can be mature through years, ongoing community building might still not be underserved. I really love this idea, Kay. I really hope you get a chance to explore it. Leveraging robotics for the disabled or caregiving community, or the really unsexy daily chores like cleaning the toilet, dusting. I really like that. Here I see Rocio talking about moving away from other sites and that seem mostly to be high engagement, large groups and groups. Okay. I see people want to practice language but struggle to find opportunities. The focus would be on service discovery. That's great. And most language apps right now are geared towards beginners. That makes sense. So I really like that differentiator, Katie. So for our next activity, what we're going to do is we're going to start thinking about ways that we were wrong about our initial problem statement. So yes, we might have made certain observances and assumptions, but now we need to really list out, well, what are situations that would invalidate the problem statements we wrote out? What assumptions would prove us wrong if we found that data out there in the world? So it's really nice to ideate and scope a problem statement, and it's a lot of fun. But what the UX research does is it forces us to be disciplined about what we hear. And if we hear evidence to the contrary, if we hear evidence about the opposite, we need to have that ability to let go of an idea and to not pursue that idea anymore. The biggest mistake I've noticed with UX career changers and beginners is that they get really obsessed about one idea and they get really excited about it. And then they are like tunnel vision full force when it comes to that idea, and they cannot let that idea go, even when there's evidence that proves that the idea is being disproved, that those assumptions that they had built their problem statement on were false. So in this exercise, I want you to think about the opposite, right? What would be an assumption or proof, not proof, but an assumption about the opposite of what you're proposing? So for example, for the social media idea, offline, I might say something like, people are addicted to social media and they still want time to be online and still want 1 to 2 hours a day to be online / connect more passively with communities. So this would be an assumption that disproves my original thinking, right? And I need to get comfortable with the idea that this is true. And oops, I did not mean to do that. And the thing is that there can be two different truths as well, right? This could be true, but also it could also be true that people are craving more in real life interaction. So we need to get comfortable with the two opposites in our thinking, and we need to find what needs to take priority when we start doing the research and validating our ideas. So I might say something like, solo women travelers want to prioritize touristy stuff, touristy experiences. And that's an assumption that disproves my original problem statement. And I'm just getting comfortable with the idea of the opposite at this point. And for the last one, women daters like variety and gamification and want to explore multiple options, not necessarily considering depth of connection. This one I know is a false assumption. I really feel like it is. But again, I need to, not get tunnel vision about my own problems. So I like to write out the opposite. So let's take 3 minutes. I know folks have already been writing stuff out. So let's do 2 more minutes or no, let's do 3 minutes. And by the way, for the folks who joined for the career planning session and also the current one, and you're still kind of validating the connection between your problem statement and your career plan, if you would like to explore this in more detail, you can always book a one-on-one call with me and we can talk through that to gain more clarity together. But I'm hoping after today, everyone has more clarity. But if you don't, and if you're still thinking through multiple options, then please feel free to book a call. All right, we have about 1 more minute left, and then I'm going to go ahead and start reading some of these statements. All right, we're coming up on a few seconds. I'm just going to start reading these. So the assumptions or considering the opposite are AI tools will assist with instant digital communication with deaf-blind people. E-commerce will take over physical shopping. Let's see, what are some other assumptions? Home robotics might be more disruptive than helpful. That's a really great considering the opposite, especially early stage for the caregiving community. People might not enjoy co-housing situations, especially living with grandparents. Tenants crave privacy and personal space more than communities. That's a really good opposite to consider. So these are really great opposites. Everyone's doing amazing. Market shows that there shows that are held at locations in various areas of the people that help bridge people in the community and business owners. All right. Many folks view study abroad as a unique era of their life to experience and then move on from it. AKA people might not care about maintaining fluency. That's a great assumption, or considering the opposite. So these are all really great. I'm seeing a lot of really good considerations here. So let's move to the next activity. What are possible solutions to these obstacles? So it is possible, for example, with the social media idea, that people want to connect in real life and have more meaningful connections. At the same time, they're addicted to platforms like Instagram and TikTok. And they do like some amount of like passive socializing where they don't have to interact, but they can just kind of passively consume content or consume social thinking, right? So what are solutions to these obstacles? Because the truth is that there's no solution that is an end all be all, right? There is no absolute. And what we do is when we wrote our problem statement, we considered our reality or our truth, and then we considered the opposite of our reality or an opposite truth. And the thing is, both truths can exist at once. So what is that happy medium where people can connect online and enjoy content online, but also have really healthy in real life connections, right? So that's that happy medium we want to get to. So what are the possible solutions to these obstacles? Now that we have considered the opposite, how do we consider a solution to the obstacle so that our original problem statement might still be true or still might be valid, right? So for example, with the social media offline element, we could say something like curate social media to prioritize IRL connections, people, or influencers that folks might want to meet with one day. So that could be a way to bridge the gap between in real life and social media. And there could be more ideas, right? It could be something like, let's see, changing the way we communicate online to drive in real life connection. So maybe things are not always about putting messaging and liking and commenting and having comment trolls everywhere on social media, but focusing on how do we take this offline so that we have that happy medium. So yeah, I'm gonna turn the timer on, and I know we're coming up on time with this last activity, so I wanna kind of get through that last one as well. So take 5 minutes to ideate and we'll go from there, and I'll be putting in my contribution as well. We have about 3 more minutes left for folks who are still ideating. I'm just going to start reading a couple of these out loud. So people may not enjoy co-housing situations. Oh, yeah. Oh, this is the one. Okay, I see. Options for different kinds of co-housing communities, similar age groups, ethnicities, hobbies even. That's really great. I love that. A balance between personal and public space. I think that one will be crucial. Uh, Lots of testing to build trust, consider safety guards. I love how everyone is thinking because I think now you're starting to see how much needs to be tested and how to find that happy medium with our problem statements. We're going to have to do a lot of research and validation and really work through the design process multiple times to really get our idea to be really thoughtful, not only thoughtful, but also effective, right? So ideation can only get us so far. In the next activity, we're going to start putting ideas into practice and start doing and working through the design process, at least at a baby level. If you want to actually turn your idea into a thoughtful MVP product or with a business model, I would recommend considering the 7-month accelerator program. All right. So the focus is on folks who do care about maintaining fluency, creating programs that help folks connect language use to their current life goals. I love this. These are all really great thoughts. So I'm excited to see this come to fruition. I think people's ideas are really exciting and intriguing, and I'd love to explore them more. And I think now people are starting to realize this. We're not going to spend too much time on the last activity because it's basically showing us what more we need to do besides ideation, which is a lot. So what are the limitations you might face to realize your project? A lot of times when we build startups, we are faced with really low budgets and operations and manufacturing limitations. So you have to really think about how do you scope your ideas down to the bare bones to a MVP or minimum viable product, the simplest possible solution that you can get that solution in the hands of your users really quickly so that you can test and iterate and build something better. Remember that entrepreneurship is not about perfection. It's about putting that scrappy idea out there, even if it's not perfect, and then evolving that idea over time and evolving the business over time so that the business becomes more scalable, becomes more competent, becomes more operationally thoughtful and intentional, or innovative, right? And how do you work around those constraints? So in the 7-month accelerator program, we focus on that simplified MVP and business model, but we also focused on how do you scale that over time? How do you build the most basic version of the thing that you want to build, but how do you pitch the vision and how do you show how you're going to get to the vision with step-by-step iteration and really thoughtful sprints and leaps into making a product or service a lot more nuanced. So if you have time, I would